Dave here. We have a new project. As you can see, this is the DCM Timeframe TF-350. I wish it were the time windows, but those are harder to come by. But I did pick up this pair of time frames. I've never had a pair of transmission line speakers in the shop, so more about that later. When we get to our sidebar, we're going to cover what is a transmission line speaker, how does it work, how does this one work, and we're going to dig right in. Let's do a little tour first. As you can see, I have the original boxes. I've already done a little disassembly on this one. Reason being, this one I didn't have any output out of the woofer when I did the first test on them. This one played all right. This one, no output on the woofer, so I want to get it accessed and see what the issue was. And the woofer itself is dead. Measures 0 ohms, so it's opened. And I looked obviously for a disconnected wire. Don't see anything, so I've actually found a replacement on eBay, and that's coming shortly. But we need to take a little tour of these. There's some disassembly tricks, maybe not tricks, but things you have to do to get them apart. You may be able to see from the boxes, these were in the guy's basement. They probably wicked up some moisture, but fortunately the bases were not damaged. It is solid oak. The top cap is solid oak. You can see some moisture stains on the grill cloth. No badges, so that's another purchase we're going to have to make. A lot of pilling on the cloth. So, and it's a sock. It's a 360-degree tube. So we're going to have to, most likely we'll sew up a new tube sock for it, and we'll show you that process as well. Inside the box, these had a nice top cap, but it had some foam on it, and that transferred here to the wood. So we'll have a refinishing project for the top cap. Now, how do you get the top cap off? Well, here's how it's attached. A couple of plastic pegs that go down into some holes in the top. This is particle board, fairly beefy all the way around. So what you need to do is get a strong putty knife in there and just kind of start working this up side to side. And eventually you'll be able to pop it out. Nothing else holding it in place. After you've done that, let me pull this one up. So I've had it out already. I'll show you what you're faced with. I've seen a couple people online did not have staples in theirs. So the sock is drawn all the way up around. I'll rotate this one around here so you can kind of get another idea of the shape. There's a little tip out foot, pivoting foot, which helps hold the speaker in place. And as you can see, this has been pulled down over the top. It's got some flocking all the way around it, and then the sock is pulled up. Seam is in the back here, so it's sewn up the back, binding post down at the bottom. Not sure what we're going to do with this flocking. It's all totally degraded. Saw some online posts, maybe automotive headliner material, something like that might not be a bad choice. I'll have to look into that. So you pull these staples. They're fairly small and easy to get out. Some people have also commented their socks were glued. I got a feeling somebody has already been in here once. The staples do not appear to be properly secured. You can see they're kind of folded over. They weren't driven deep enough, and so then they took a hammer to them and pounded them in the rest of the way, and all it did was bent them over. So once you have removed those staples and maybe there's a little dry glue, you can pull the sock down. We'll go through that process on this one, but I think you get the idea. I then pulled out the woofer, and you can see below it is the tweeter. I'm going to leave that for now. Not going to do full disassembly yet. I wanted to access the crossover and see what we were working with. I did end up just cutting off the wires for the woofer. Very interesting crossover. I'm not, it must be some sort of second order. Got a aluminum core inductor. We've got a little air core inductor, resistor, 3 caps, and I'm not sure what's original and what's not. So we're going to do a little digging on that. A little closer look at the tweeter here. We've got little dome tweeter, and then this square shaped pad, which has 4 felt pads in each corner, and then this is stapled on. This is stapled over the grill cloth sock, so we're going to have to pry up these staples. And this is metal. Yeah, looks like metal mesh screening. So very interesting. I'm sure they were concerned about baffle reflections. It's very strange design. It's got this recess and then a lip, and but once we get into the whole transmission line design, it's going to have everything to do with the driver, the tweeter, and then down here we're going to find a port. So I'm sure there was a lot of engineering gone into this. Steve Eberbach, the guy that is the founder of DCM, was the technical brains behind DCM. I know I believe he's an MIT grad, and pretty much dedicated his entire life to this. So more in the sidebar. All right, we're going to pry, start getting these staples out, fairly straightforward. Started with the pick. They appear to be standard T50 staples, so I don't see anything special here other than they're painted black. There's the felt metal mesh piece. Can't imagine how you come up with a design like that without, other than through empirical experimentation. Very interesting. All right, we'll pop the tweeter out, and then hopefully we'll be able to fish this whole thing out of the box and get it on the bench, because we've got to get this flocking. This flocking is really nasty stuff. As you pull the inner sock, there's 2 socks here. There's an outer sock and then an inner sock that had the flocking, and it's just all degrading and it's getting airborne, so I'm not happy with that. We definitely are going to get rid of the flocking. Now, what we put on afterwards is a different question. Neglected to show you the information on the woofer and the tweeter, but now that I've pulled the tweeter, it's the classic VIFA D19 TD7, very popular tweeter at this time. They made and sold a lot of these. These are still fairly available. If you need one, is this part right here, a 719/631 22/911, 5 ohms. So that's obviously unique, a little bit unique to the design. And they seem to all come with this red back cap plug over the magnet structure. So kind of interesting, but otherwise fairly standard, steel basket, paper cone, home surround. All right, I have had one person tell me, well, why are you going to put a new sock on there? These, you can just clean up all those pills and just cut those off. It'll clean right up. And that's true. If there's a few pills on there, you can cut them off, and they just shave them off with a really sharp X-Acto knife, and it works. There are hundreds plus some holes. So when you have hundreds of pills plus holes, that sounds like it's time to purchase the proper speaker cloth, grill cloth, and get out the sewing machine and sew up a new one. And it's also faded into that kind of brownish black with sun fading. We have pulled out the rest of the crossover. We just snipped off all the rest of the hardware, so we've got that. We'll start taking some measurements on the different components here. Hopefully we don't have to unsolder everything to get some good measurements. My guess is these two caps are going to go, and it looks like this is probably a shunt cap or a bypass cap of some sort. It's 0.47 microfarad, so yeah, probably a shunt cap. So we'll see if we can get a crossover diagram online, or perhaps make one. We'll determine what we've got here. My guess is we're going to be getting some new caps and putting those in as well. Just a quick look at the bottom end here. Just a couple screws holding the binding post cup on, and then those wires just run straight up to the crossover that we looked at already. We've got our data plate and label, our rotating foot, which is held on with a bolt. Let's come around here. So we'll pull that bolt, and it looks like we need to get to that to get the sock off. And then the base itself, this piece of oak, is held on just with 2 screws. So let's strip all that down and see if we can get the rest of the sock off. Unfortunately, the DCM Timeframe TF350 manual was at the bottom of this box, and you can see the moisture. It wicked up through the box, stuck the manual to the bottom of this piece of wood. So that's pretty much not usable at this point. What we have here is a fairly inexpensive to make box. And so you think about how other manufacturers were making speakers at this time, and walnut veneer and really nice walnut vinyls. Here we've got something very different. Got some fairly coarse particle board. Things are not exactly cut perfectly to size. There's no sanding. It's fairly inexpensive to make a box like this. You run it through the table saw, you glue and nail it together, and then their solution was to put the sock over it. And this flocking is something we're going to have to deal with, because I'm not putting that back on. I can guarantee of that. I got a noodle on that for a while. We'll take just a minute here and go through the crossover. I've pulled it out of the box, obviously. Here's the baseline. Here's one I've already updated. So we've got a 0.47 cap here. I believe this is just a shunt or bypass. We've got a 6.8 here and a 47 microfarad here. So I believe this is just part of the roll-off circuit, so not critical. This is probably the key critical cap. Not probably, it is the key critical cap. So I don't have any 6.8s, so I took a 4.7 and a 2.2. These are MKP caps. Put those together, and so we've got that mounted. That would be 6.9, which is obviously very close to 6.8. I don't have I have a 25 volt 47 in electrolytic, and probably electrolytic is all that's needed here. But I have quite a few 47s in MKP, so as you can see, I've already installed that one. I couldn't mount it, like this, because the woofer actually may get in the way of it. So I've kind of put it off to the top and reinforced it with some hot glue so that we can get it in there, get it mounted. Everything looks good now. So we'll modify this one and get this reinstalled. I've checked the resistors. I've got all the values on that. I'll show you that in a minute. Resistors are all good, and inductors are straightforward. Just a quick update on the woodworking activities here. I took the feet off, just did a quick sand respray, some black on those. Those are all set. I'm going to go for a little bit more of a mission color as opposed to the 80s orange oak. I just scraped off the foam residue that was here from the packaging, but I'm going to sand these down to the point where I can restain them in a darker color. These are the top caps that you see here, and these are the bases. So this is the top side of the base, which never saw the light of day other than, just a small reveal around the edge and the edge itself. So we'll get that sanded. Here's the bottoms, and you can see they're a little dinged up from being pushed around and scraped on floors and such, which makes sense. So I think, we're just going to go a little darker, a little maybe a little Sedona red walnut mix on stain, and get these a little more mission oriented. Part of the reason I'm doing that is I have a lot of mission furniture in my own home, and these are possibilities to be keepers, so I want to get them to blend a little more. I'll come back and show you those when they're done. Brief update on our wood refinishing. So this is the base. This is the upper surface of the base. The only part that shows is just these three edges, about 1/4 inch reveal plus the side. So you can see this is more close to the original color, and here's where I sanded down through the stain and restained, and looking for more of a mission style. Here I just flipped this cap upside down. Here's the restained version, and so they're both restained appropriately. I did a check with my furniture. It looks quite good. So that's we're going to leave that as is now. Put a coat of walnut Danish oil. The stain was half early American, half special walnut. That was the color that I got to provide this match here. Let's begin our discussion about DCM, talk a little bit about the company, and then we'll get into transmission line speakers. So this is actually an ad for the local bank, and it shows the founders of DCM. Got some of his business partners, and then Steve Eberbach, who was their chief technical guy, went to MIT, met Dr. Bose, learned, I think, a lot from Dr. Bose, getting into reflections and coherence and time arrival of speakers, and I think that's kind of what formed his ideas for how to make good speakers, to be honest with you. And this ad gets a little bit into the history of the company. Here is a photograph of Steve and his marketing manager, Watson, in '91. This would have been about the time frame our TF350s were manufactured. Here you can see the time window models.
He's got his arm on one here, and they're laid out in the factory, you know, at different stages of production. Steve's vision was that the speakers needed to sound like speakers that were a lot more expensive. So Magnapans and Dahlquist DQ10s, you know, those kind of speakers were really popular at the time, and they were kind of the lead audiophile type speakers, and he wanted to make something cheaper, but just as good. This is the rest of the article that goes along with that photograph. There was a little. They were located in Ann Arbor, and there was a local TV article a local newspaper article talking about how their company was rising and surviving and making out. A little bit more on Steve. If you want to watch a video about the founding of the company and his ideas for the company, there is a YouTube video here that you can click on and watch. I've listened to that. It's quite interesting. The quality of the video is extremely poor, but the audio is fine. Let's talk about transmission line speakers. This is a very complicated subject, and technically it is. But let's try to get it down to some images that might really help. You can go into Google and you can learn more. I'm going to click on this Wikipedia entry, and it goes into a lot of background on transmission line speakers, and you eventually get down to a couple of images here that I believe are the best way to think about it, and along with our speakers. And we're going to start with this picture up and top. We've got a driver pointing to the left, and imagine the back of the speaker is captured with a tube, and that tube is of a length such that after one cycle we'd be here, but then after a quarter of the cycle we'd be here, the maximum output. What if we then took this back end of the tube and kind of pulled it around so it faced forward? So we'll wrap that tube in a 180-degree arc so that it points back out to the front, the same direction. Well, what you'd end up with is you'd end up with an amplification of the sound moving out to the left, because one cycle behind it's going to come along this wave, which has been created by the coil and the magnet pulling backwards towards the tube. So yes, it's off by one cycle, 1 1/4 cycles, but that's pretty imperceptible for the ear. That's usually a very short time frame. So what you end up with is this picture down here in the lower left, where here's the sound you get out of the dotted line is the sound you get out of the driver by putting a microphone in front. But here's the sound that comes out of the port, which is the end of the tube. Now, you have to wrap it around to get it pointed in the same direction as the speaker, and this is what the Timeframe TF350 has to do. You can see we get all of this extra amplitude for across a lower frequency range. So you're enhancing the bass. That's really what it does. It enhances the bass, still gives you a nice fall off that's natural, just like the speaker has a natural fall off. The sound coming out of that port, which is that tube, also has a natural fall off. Let's take a look at our DCM TF350 before I put the sock back on. I regret not having taken a photo inside the box, but remember, we have a trapezoidal shaped box. It's tapered. It's wide. It's deeper at the base than it is at the top up here. Here's our port, and here's our main driver up here. You can see there is some absorbing material up here, and the tube doesn't connect directly to the back side of where the woofer's located. The tube actually begins right about here. It's probably 12 to 14 inches up from where the output is. So there is a small speaker cavity back here, but I think that's why they've included a lot of this polyfill up here, is to absorb some reflected waves. But it's a fairly small space, so it's capturing a lot of that pressure from the pull-in of the woofer, and it's directing it from that small space into the tube, which is the port, which comes down to here. So my guess is that they spent quite a bit of time optimizing the shape of the trapezoid and the length of this tube, the diameter of the tube port, in order to make sure that they get that amplification process of the sound coming out of the port. That's my guess. So is this true transmission line? Probably not, in the way that you see some folded horns and capturing all that energy coming from the back. It's really just a really nicely tuned port. That's my take on it. And the fact that it points out the front, not all ports point out the front, but I suspect it's highly tuned. I didn't take the time to do 2 measurements. You probably could plug the port and then open the port and see the equivalent of the base extension that you can see in the image that we just looked at. Well, that's my take on how this is working. It's definitely like a transmission line speaker, but I consider it a highly tuned port. And I will tell you, I put my ear to this when I'm playing music, and you can tell that there is definitely some nice bass amplification there on those low notes. Here's the image we were speaking about, and here's the extra bass extension that we're describing. If you would like to learn a lot more about transmission line speakers, and there's a lot to learn, I'll tell you. This is there's probably there's some very smart people who have spent their lifetime working on this. This is probably one of the key sites you want to go to, quarterwave.com. This guy Martin King seems to have captured the most documentation about how all this works and why it works the way it works. Much more technical, and they get into photos that different contributors have put in regarding transmission line speakers. I'm just scrolling through them quickly so you get an idea. This is an area ripe for homemade DIY projects. And the reason I think that is it's very empirical. To get it right, you have to do some experimentation and find what works for you, for your drivers, for your box. And I suspect small changes in your design can make a big difference, and it makes it hard to model. So that's my quick take on transmission line speakers, as evidenced by the TF350. Are they transmission line speakers? Nah, I don't really think so. But I think they're a nice compromise between a standard bass reflex speaker and a sealed box and a transmission line. So they kind of fit in a blend between all of them. So I think that'll finish our sidebar. Let's get on with finishing our project.
I need to provide you the next update now on where we're going with grill cloths and flocking. So I vacuumed off all of the degraded flocking material that was on the speaker. Now the flocking's doing 2 things. Number one, it was on the baffle piece, baffle board, in order to prevent surface reflections, off this front face. It was also on the sides and edges to allow a little cushion so that they didn't have to have fully finished cabinetry here. And the flocking was actually attached to this inner liner. So there's actually 2 pieces of fabric on each speaker. There's this inner liner which actually contained the flocking, and it had appropriate cutouts so that you know, the drivers could play right through and through the port. And then there was seam in the back. So I took this material off, and it still had so much embedded flocking in it. I actually dunked it in a bucket with some dish soap, cleaned it, got rid of all the flocking dust, which was terrible. And I did the same with the sock, which is the actual grill cloth. Here's the other one right here, just so you can see the sock. This one's inside out. It's just sewn with a simple seam right up the back side, and that'll give us some ideas on, we're going to have to break out the sewing machine to sew a new sock for these. I have gone ahead and purchased speaker cloth. I was short to be able to do them, so gives you an idea of how the color change happens over time. The black really becomes this kind of purple brownish black, and then we'll get back to real black with that. So that'll be another step. But the flocking's gone, and we really need to have something in here to prevent those reflections off this front baffle. So did some checking, and it seems like the correct answer is felt, acrylic felt. So I purchased a section of acrylic felt on Amazon. It's fairly inexpensive. I've got a lot more than I need. You could do this both speakers. You can do this front section for $10 easily. So we'll cut a piece and cover this front baffle. We'll make cutouts, obviously, for the drivers. Then the question is, what are we going to do about the sides? We can't just pull a sock over this. I think it's going to reveal too much. Putting a new grill cloth sock over it is going to be difficult to stretch it over, number one. I know that because I tried to take one of the old socks and put it on. It does work, but it's very difficult. The particle board is so rough, it's very difficult to get the tube sock down over all the rough particle board. And I'm afraid it's going to show a little too much of the roughness of the cabinetry underneath. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the very thin undersock, let's call it, that had the flocking. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the old sock as the underlayer for the new grill cloth sock. So after we put the black felt on, put the black felt only on this front face, and we're going to take the old sock, roll it over. We'll make the cutouts for the drivers and for the port. We'll get the drivers mounted. We'll sew up a new sock, and then we'll put that over both. So the sock, the new sock made with the new grill cloth, is going to go over the old sock, which will now have cutouts for the drivers. Should be a little more apparent once we make some more progress, but that's the current plan. And you might say, well, why don't you just reuse the old one? It appears that it's really not sized the way I would like to see it. You know, it doesn't. I believe what's happened is it stretched and maybe shrunk a little bit in my washing. I use cold water wash, so I didn't think it would do that, but it's just so thin, and it's starting to rip and tear. So it's not the exact same material as the speaker cloth. It's a little thinner material, and so I think the thicker will actually work a little better. That's the current plan. If it doesn't work out, I've really not invested in anything. I can always go back to this and make it work. I had a hard time getting the two sides to close on the back side here. Couldn't get it quite back to the middle without really super, yeah, maybe I can, but it just seems like it shouldn't have to be quite that tight. And I'm afraid that I'm going to rip it, and it's, 40, 45 years old now, so let's go with that.
Brief status update. We've got our felt stapled, cut and stapled on. We've reinstalled our two drivers, crossover reinstalled, remounted, two drivers reinstalled, the metal mesh over the tweeter with those anti-reflective pads, that's been stapled on. I touched up all the staples with a little Sharpie. We've cut the hole for the port, and they're playing beautifully. So functionally, we're complete now, and I've listened to them and they sound wonderful. The port, the transmission, pseudo transmission line, I think we're gonna call this. It's not full transmission line, but pseudo transmission line. It's just a really good port design from what I've seen. And we're ready for the inner sock. Next step, here we go. So what we've done at this point is we've put our old grill cloth sock over the box. I have not finally attached it yet, but I put the cloth over. I made a cutout for our tweeter and our midwoofer. Oh, there's Willie. He's got his cow with him. And we continue. So this is ready to put our main sock on. Our new sock, we ended up making a tapered tube. So I've got it 1 inch smaller circumference on the top than I do on the bottom, since the boxes themselves are a bit tapered. And I ended up doing a first stitch seam out here. It was still too loose, so I moved in another inch, so that takes 2 inches out of the circumference of the cloth, and that seems about right for tightness and tension all the way around. So we're going to drop this over, and by the way, make sure you do, the fabric itself has a face side and a back side, so make sure you have the sew it with the face sides together, so then you can turn your tube inside out after you've got your stitch made, and you'll be there. So I'm just going to put this over the top just so you can see how it fits. I pulled it down a little bit too far just so you can see, but this is how we're going to make it work. You get enough stretch on the upper side or in the vertical direction so that you can pull everything up to the top. So we'll do our first stapling up at the top here. We're going to staple both layers up to the top piece, and that side will be done. Then we'll flip the box over and staple the bottom, apply our top and bottom cap, and we'll be there. So it's got a nice tension level on it. Very happy with that. And I think you can see how black really is when it's done correctly. Brief update here. We've stapled top and bottom. I'll flip it over so you can see the other side. But this is ready now for our bottom cap and our top cap to be reattached. There's the top cap. Just goes right on straight, and we'll pound that down. Let me flip it over so you can see the other end. Here's the bottom. Same process. Pull, staple, and I've stapled through, of course, both layers of the inner sock, the old reused outer grill, which is now the inner sock, and then the outer sock. So we'll attach our leg reattach our base plate to this. And then we'll do the other one. It's coming up next. I'm really happy with the result. Here they are in the finished state. We've got the badges came in. We've got those located. Wood refinishing complete, everything assembled, double socks. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had fun making it. I'm putting this pair actually in my main system upstairs, so they won't be for sale right now. I'm just going to enjoy them a bit. They fit really nice with my decor, and they sound wonderful. So please consider liking the video if you enjoyed it and subscribing to New to You Speakers. We've got another project coming up and should make for another great video. So enjoy the Cha-Cha Fontanez, and thank you very much for watching.